It's not love, it's chemistry. That's the truth no one wants to admit, especially in a world where every emotion is romanticized and every connection is called soul deep. But what most people mistake for love is actually addiction. It starts quietly. A text, a look, a moment of attention that lights something inside her. He doesn't even have to say much. A simple glance, a pause before a reply, a hint of mystery in his tone, and her brain starts releasing dopamine, the same chemical that floods the body when someone wins a gamble, takes a drug, or achieves a goal. That's the first hit. And she doesn't even know it. She tells herself she's just interested, that he's different, that there's something about him. But it's not about him. It's about what he triggers. Because real addiction doesn't announce itself. It doesn't start with chaos. It starts with chemistry. The modern woman has been trained to crave excitement. Constant stimulation, attention, emotion, and when a man gives her just enough to feel something, but not enough to feel secure, her mind enters survival mode. She starts chasing the next spark, the next text, the next sign that he still cares. That's not attraction anymore. That's withdrawal. You see, love is peaceful, but addiction is unpredictable. And the human brain doesn't crave peace. It craves reward. It craves the next emotional hit. That's why she can't stop thinking about him even when he's silent. That's why she checks her phone even when she swears she's moved on. Because deep down, her mind is wired to chase the one who made her feel the most, even if he made her feel miserable too. And here's the part that no one talks about. This addiction isn't created by accident. It's created by pattern. Moments of connection followed by distance. Attention, then silence. Warmth, then withdrawal. Every time he pulls away, her brain panics. Every time he returns, her brain rewards her. And before she realizes it, the man isn't the addiction. The hope of him is. That's why she can't let go. Because what she's addicted to isn't love. It's uncertainty. It's the rush of not knowing what's next. And the men who understand this dynamic, whether consciously or not, become unforgettable. Not because they're special. Not because they're possessed perfect. But because they mastered the art of emotional scarcity. And they learned that in a world where everyone overshares, the one who stays unreadable becomes magnetic. So no, it's not love. It's not even desire. It's dependency. And once a woman gets a taste of that chemistry, of that high, she'll chase it long after he's gone. Because the most powerful addiction isn't to a substance. It's to a feeling that only one man seemed able to create. Every addiction starts with a high. And in love, that high is called the spark. It's not magic. It's biology. That moment when her pulse quickens, when the air feels charged, when one text or glance feels like gravity, that's not destiny. That's dopamine. The brain's reward system lights up like a slot machine. Every interaction feels like a win. Every reply, every compliment, every flirty exchange releases tiny hits of pleasure. And she starts to crave more. See, men and women both feel attraction, but women are wired to respond more intensely to emotional stimuli. Not just physical, but psychological. The tone of his voice, the timing of his responses, the mystery in his silence, it all feeds the loop. And dopamine doesn't want love. It wants novelty. It doesn't care if he's good for her. It only cares that he's unpredictable. That's why the calm, steady man often feels boring, because he doesn't trigger uncertainty. He doesn't activate the chase. But the man who gives her warmth one day and distance the next, he becomes the puzzle she can't stop trying to solve. Each time he withdraws, her dopamine drops, and her brain starts craving the next hit, the next text, the next sign that she still matters. And when that hit finally comes, when the message appears, when the phone lights up with his name, she feels relief that borders on euphoria. That's not love. That's chemical dependency. It's the same mechanism that drives addiction to gambling, social media, even drugs. A cycle of reward and withdrawal, a neurological loop that turns emotional volatility into desire. The cruel part? She mistakes the intensity for connection, because the chaos feels real, the calm doesn't. And once that spark ignites, she starts associating pain with passion. The emotional roller coaster becomes her comfort zone. The stability of peace feels empty compared to the rush of unpredictability. That's why she can't explain why she's drawn to him, why she keeps going back, why she dreams about him even when she knows he's not right for her. Because the addiction isn't to him. It's to how he makes her feel. The highs are intoxicating, the lows are devastating. And the contrast between them keeps her hooked. The modern dating world runs on this loop. Men who understand it, even subconsciously, use it without realizing they're weaponizing biology. They keep their distance just enough to maintain power. They give emotion just enough to keep her hoping. And over time, that spark that once felt like love becomes a leash she can't see. A psychological bond built not on affection, but on withdrawal. Because the truth is brutal. She's not addicted to the man. She's addicted to the feeling of earning him. The most dangerous kind of attention isn't constant. It's inconsistent. That's the secret. The reason she can't stop thinking about him. The reason she checks her phone 10 times an hour. The reason silence from him feels louder than words. Because her mind isn't chasing love anymore. It's chasing reward. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement. It's the same principle used in casinos, social media, and addiction research. The brain learns that the next dopamine hit could come any time, so it stays on high alert, watching, waiting, anticipating. That's how attention becomes addiction. He texts her, makes her laugh, gives her warmth, then disappears. No explanation, no closure, just silence. Her brain panics. Did I do something wrong? Did he lose interest? Did he find someone else? Anxiety floods her system. And then suddenly he's back. A casual message, a voice note, a like on her story, relief, euphoria, the reward. And that's how the hook sets deeper. It's not the consistency that bonds her. It's the unpredictability, the chaos between moments of closeness. Because the less certain the connection, the more value her mind assigns to it. That's the paradox. When she doesn't know when she'll get his attention again, every small gesture becomes magnified. A 2-word reply feels like affection. A heart emoji feels like a confession. She starts reading meaning into everything. His tone, his timing, his silence. And every guess, every overanalysis, every unanswered text only strengthens the addiction. See, constant affection creates comfort, but intermittent affection creates obsession. And that's why she can't let go. Because he's not just a man anymore. He's a pattern. A psychological loop of reward and uncertainty that her brain interprets as emotional significance. This is how modern relationships become psychological traps. The cycle of hot and cold becomes a bond. The unpredictability becomes proof of depth. And she mistakes inconsistency for intensity. But here's what most people don't understand. The man doesn't have to be manipulative to cause this. He doesn't even have to try. Sometimes all it takes is emotional inconsistency, being half present long enough to create attachment, but distant enough to keep her guessing. The women who fall into this pattern often swear they're strong, independent, in control. But control doesn't matter when chemistry takes over, because the brain doesn't speak empowerment, it speaks survival. And in survival mode, anything unpredictable feels important. That's why when he's gone, she feels empty. When he returns, she feels alive. And the deeper the cycle goes, the harder it becomes to see it for what it is. Not connection, but conditioning. Because once a woman starts chasing consistency from someone who only offers chaos, she's not in love anymore. She's in withdrawal. There's a moment in every addiction when the brain stops responding to the truth and starts living for the illusion. That's where the shift happens, where reality fades and fantasy takes control. She doesn't fall in love with the man anymore. She falls in love with the idea of him. It starts small, a few good memories, some inside jokes, a handful of late-night conversations that felt real. But when he pulls away, when the attention fades, when his presence becomes unpredictable, her mind fills in the blanks. She doesn't ask why he's distant. She imagines what he must be thinking. She doesn't remember the moments of disinterest. She romanticizes the moments that felt intense. And now, the version of him she's holding on to isn't real. It's a carefully constructed fantasy designed to protect her from the pain of uncertainty. See, when reality hurts, fantasy heals. But only temporarily. Her brain uses imagination as a drug, replaying the best moments like scenes from a movie. The look in his eyes when he laughed. The way his tone softened when he called her name. Every little detail becomes evidence that what they had was special. That's how fantasy becomes obsession. Because in fantasy, he's perfect. He's attentive, misunderstood, emotionally deep. A man with layers she alone can unlock, but in reality, he's distant, inconsistent, unavailable. She doesn't love him. She loves the version of him her mind created to justify the pain of losing him. That's why she'll say things like, "He's not like other guys. He's just complicated. He needs time." These are not observations. They're coping mechanisms. Ways to maintain the illusion that the connection still means something. But the more she clings to the fantasy, the less she can see the truth. That she's no longer connecting with him. She's connecting with her own emotions. The way he made her feel has become bigger than who he actually is. That's the cruel genius of emotional addiction. It convinces you that longing is love, that confusion is depth, that chaos is chemistry. And the more she invests in that fantasy, the more she fears reality, because reality threatens to destroy the story she's built in her head. So she avoids it. She rationalizes. She tells her friends, "I don't understand him." She defends the same person who keeps her anxious. Not because she's weak, but because she's addicted to the illusion of potential. And potential is the most dangerous fantasy of all, because it gives pain a purpose. It makes suffering feel meaningful. It keeps her chasing a version of him that only exists in memory. That's how women get addicted, not to men, but to the stories they tell themselves about them. Every high has a crash. And in love addiction, the crash doesn't come with silence, it comes with absence. One day, she wakes up and the messages stop. No calls, no check-ins, no reassurance, just emptiness, where attention used to live. And that's when the withdrawal begins. Her mind spirals, her body tightens, her heart races. She refreshes his page, checks his status, replays every conversation trying to find the moment everything shifted. Her brain, once calm, is now in survival mode. Because addiction doesn't care about logic, it only cares about access. And the second that access is gone, it screams for a fix. It's not just emotional, it's neurological. Studies show that the brain reacts to heartbreak the same way it reacts to drug withdrawal. The same areas that light up when a person is craving a substance, light up when someone craves attention. And that's the cruel irony. The man who made her feel alive now makes her feel like she's dying. Not because he's special, but because he became her source of dopamine. And when that supply disappears, her system crashes. She doesn't want him back. Not really. She wants the relief that came with his presence, the calm that followed the chaos, the comfort of knowing she could still reach for him, even if he wasn't good for her. That's why she texts him again. That's why she breaks her own promises. That's why she says, "I just want closure." When Deep down, she's chasing the rush of recognition, the hit of validation that says, I still matter. Withdrawal isn't weakness, it's wiring. And the cruel part is, she can't see it, because the addiction disguises itself as love. It convinces her that missing him means he's the one, that suffering for him means the bond was real, that waiting for him means she's loyal, not lost. But here's the truth. She's not missing the man. She's missing the chemical balance her body had when he was around. She's not in love with who he is. She's in withdrawal from how he made her feel. That's why no amount of logic helps. Why advice from friends doesn't sink in. Why she says, I know he's bad for me, but I can't stop thinking about him. Because she's not thinking, she's craving. And the only cure isn't getting him back, it's detoxing from the illusion. That's the hardest part. Because emotional detox doesn't happen overnight. It's messy. It's painful. It feels like losing a part of herself. But what she's really losing is the version of herself that was addicted to being chosen. And that's not loss. That's freedom beginning to take shape. It always comes back around. No matter how much distance she tries to create, how many affirmations she repeats, how many times she promises herself she's done, the loop pulls her back. One message, one memory, one moment of weakness, and suddenly she's back in the same cycle. Loving him, losing him, missing him, needing him. That's the loop. And it doesn't start with romance, it starts with relief. When he reaches out again, even briefly, her anxiety disappears, her heart steadies, her brain floods with dopamine, and that temporary calm convinces her that the connection was real all along. But that's not love. That's the reward system resetting itself. The same way an addict says, just one more hit, she tells herself. Just one more conversation. The same chemical pattern, pain, craving, relief, repeats until she can no longer tell the difference between affection and dependency. And that's the trick. That's how addiction disguises itself as love. It tells her the pain is proof. It tells her the effort means depth. It tells her the suffering makes it sacred. Because the harder it is to have him, the more valuable he seems. That's not love. That's scarcity. She mistakes emotional exhaustion for passion and obsession for devotion. And the more she invests in the cycle, the harder it becomes to leave. Because leaving means admitting that all the pain had no purpose. That's the cruel genius of the loop. It doesn't need him to be consistent. It only needs her to be hopeful. He can vanish for weeks and she'll still hold on to a single memory, a text, a night, a moment that felt real. Because when you're addicted, hope becomes the drug that keeps you from healing. This is why so many modern relationships never end. They just pause between relapses. One person breaks away, the other sends a message, and the loop begins again. And every time she goes back, it gets harder to see clearly, because every high feels shorter and every crash hits deeper. That's how addiction works. It doesn't stop when you're aware of it. It stops when you stop feeding it. That's why the calm man, the one who doesn't chase, doesn't plead, doesn't react, becomes such a shock to the system. He doesn't give her the highs or the lows. He doesn't activate the loop. And in that silence, she starts to feel withdrawal. Not from him, but from the emotional chaos she thought was love. Because love isn't supposed to feel like survival. It's supposed to feel like safety. And the moment she realizes that, the addiction breaks. Not because she stopped caring about him, but because she finally started caring about herself.